Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Maseches Yevamos Daf Hey. We're holding right on top of the Amud, and actually we're in the midst of a sugya discussion regarding Asay Deiche Loisaseh, which in effect means that when one is faced with a conflicting situation, on the one hand, he has a mitzvah Asay telling him, proceed, do this Ma'aseh mitzvah. On the other hand, this Ma'aseh also entails a Loisaseh, which tells him, stop right there, you may not do this. Which one prevails? The answer is, Asay overrides the Loisaseh, Asay Deiche Loisaseh, and he proceeds with the Ma'aseh mitzvah. So this is a halacha that we know, but where's the makar? We're looking for the source for this halacha. Now, how did we get into this discussion to begin with? You see, because way back on Daf Beis, the Mishnah spoke about those 15 nashim who happened to be arayos to the Yavam. So, aside from being his brother's widow, which in itself is really an erva, but is mutter in a context of Yibam when she has no children, aside from being a sister-in-law, she's also a daughter. There is some other familial connection between herself and this potential Yavam, this surviving brother. There is no Yibum in this case. Why? The Gemara of Gimel and Beis tells us we have a pasuk of a drasha based on the word Aleha to tell you that an erva is pater from Yibum. The Gemara asked, why a pasuk? Isn't it obvious? Why would I think that you can be miyabim? An erva. What is Yibum? A mitzvah saseh. An erva is an isser. Isser loisaseh. Not only that, it's a loisaseh that contains karis as well. Who's to say that an esser can negate a loisaseh, number one, and certainly negate a loisaseh that carries with it a penalty of karis? That's so severe. Who's to say that there's even a notion, even a hava amina, that this can happen? Why would we need a pasuk to disallow it? That was the question which triggered this whole sugya. And that sent us along on our trip, on our journey, with a quest to discover the makar, the source for this concept of Asay Deiche Loisaseh, and not just a regular Loisaseh, but even a Loisaseh sheish b'karis. So the Gemara introduced us to the concept of kilayim b'tzitzis. One may go ahead and wear tzitzis, a mitzvah asay, even at the expense of kilayim. So he has a mixture of wool and linen in his tzitzis, that's okay. How do we know that's true? By using the method of drasha called smuchen, arrangement. The fact that Torah placed the pasuk of tzitzis next to the pasuk of kilayim tells you it's okay to have tzitzis made from kilayim. Now this only worked according to Tanat V'Rebbe Shmuel, because according to that shita, we had some extra words there which enabled us to make that drasha. That was an indication that the drasha of smuchen is meant to be applied. And that's what takes us to the next kasha. This works according to them. We have extra words which indicate that this drasha should be applied. The drasha to allow kalayim by tzitzis, which pretty much tells us that this concept is true. Asay is deiche loisaseh. The mitzvah of tzitzis overrides the loisaseh of kilayim. By the way, of course, it's a kasa, but the Rishonim endeavor to explain for us this concept. How is it so that one mitzvah can override the other? The Asay is deiche loisaseh. How do we understand it? So Rabbi Nissim Goyen in Shabbos of Kuf Lamed Gimel, he has a novel approach. He says, look, although we have a mitzvah asay, wear tzitzis. We have a mitzvah loisaseh, don't wear kilayim. Typically, you try to be mekayim both, right? However, when there is a clash, a collision, they're incompatible. We have kilayim material for tzitzis. In this case, it's not that the mitzvah asay quashes the loisaseh. No, that's not how it works. Rather, it says that Nissim Goyen, it works like this. Initially, way back when, by Matan Torah, when Hashem gave us this mitzvah of kilayim, it was not meant for this context. It was not intended for this circumstance, where you'll be faced with a choice of kilayim or tzitzis. In this case, you do the tzitzis. Same could be said regarding Yibum. Mitzvah of Yibum, and the The Isha is the sister-in-law, right? The classic case of Yevamos is really an erva, wife of his brother. Still, Torah says, go ahead and do the Yivam. Although typically a sister-in-law is an erva. No, not in this case, not in this context. In this circumstance, the Issa was never given. In fact, there's an interesting Rabbeinu Chananel here in Shavuos, Maseches Shavuos, Daf Chafam and Beis. He brings a Yerushalmi. Listen to this. We all know that Zachar v'Shamar b'dibur echad, right? The term Zachar in the first dibros and Shamar in the second dibros were said at the same time. Hashem expressed them both at the same time, something miraculous beyond our means, right? The Yerushalmi adds several more examples. So not only was Zachar v'Shamar said at once, but other things as well. For instance, we bring Karbonis on Shabbos. Mechalel Mois Yumas was said together with Ubiyem Shabbos Shnei Kvasim. Simultaneous expression. They both work hand in hand. Don't be Mechalel Shabbos, but bring Karbonis. Listen to this. V'chein, he says, Lo Yisilbash Shatnes, Gedilim Tasalacha. Don't wear Shatnes, but wear tzitzis, even if it's Shatnes. V'chein, this pertains to us, to Maseches Yevamos. Evers Eishes Achich Lo Yisegala. Don't interact with the Isha of your brother, sister-in-law. At the same time, Hashem says, Yevamo Yavo Yalea, Mitzvah Sibam. He goes through a bunch of examples here. Everything was Bedibur Echad Nemru. V'cheinu Oimer Achaz Dibur Lekim Shtayim Zushamati. Halokoi Dvara Ke'eshtem Hashem, only Hashem can do that. It's compatible. There's no contradiction. Israch is Isha, Isha Sach, together Yevamo Yavo Yalea. Don't wear shatnez, but in a tzitzis context, it's mutter. So basically, it was never asur in that context, as Tosis and Avgimon Rav explains for us. Yibum by Isha Sach, Dalar Manov. By Isha Sach, that's mitzvah bekach. That's just the way it is. That's the Torah's mantra. This is the way to do Yibum. Fits very well with this Yerushalmi. It's not a conflict, not a contradiction. This is the way the Torah was presented by Hashem. Hashem packaged it this way. Typically, you don't wear shatnez, but in the case of in the tzitzis context, there's no issue of shatnez. Hashem said at the same time, don't wear shatnez, wear tzitzis. Don't interact with a sister-in-law, but yevama yevela. To indicate that in this circumstance, there was never an issur to begin with. That's how Rav Nissim Goyen explains the whole concept of issur deichel issur. Say, no, ask a conscious Marik, ask on him, if so, then why, if the Elisha he has chorist, do we not apply this formula? We don't allow the Essa to override it. So actually, they bring the Ramban Chumash and Parshas Yisrei, Seres HaDibros. He has a novel approach to the whole concept. He says, look, the Torah is divided into two parts. We have the mitzvahs asay, mitzvahs leis asay. Mitzvahs asay, the mitzvahs asay are rooted in ahava, connection to Hashem, a feeling of love, relationship. On the other hand, you have lois asays, which are rooted in the concept of yira, fear of defying Hashem, of separating from Hashem, etc. It's more of a sort of a negative feeling. Av is more of a positive. Yira is a sort of a negative feeling. And obviously, they're both valuable. They're both vital components to our avodas Hashem and in our Torah. But nevertheless, says Ramban, positive energy is stronger, and Ava is stronger than Yira. Amazing. So that's why an Asay, which represents Avas Hashem, overrides Elois Asay, which represents Yirus Hashem. Typically, there is no conflict. You meant to Mekayim everything. In fact, the Gemara says, if Efshel Lekayim Shneim, if you have the easy option to be Mekayim both, of course, don't make an artificial conflict. But otherwise, if it's one or the other, says Ramban, Ahava is Doiche Yira, and therefore Asay Doiche Elois Asay. Amazing approach. So, we're working with that premise, with that notion, the Esed Doiche Elois Asay. The question just is where? Where do we know this from? We suggested perhaps Tzitzis provides that source, but that only works according to Tana de Bishma. Because according to that Shita, there are extra words which enable the drasha, which results in this concept of Kalayim being mutter by Tzitzis. However, says the Gemara, according to Rabbanon, where there are no extra words, as we learned yesterday. So, according to them, what enabled this drasha? And according to them, how do we know? You can have tzitzis made from kalaim. How do you know? Answers the Gemara, Nafkahu mi roishai. They learn it from the word roishai, which is mentioned by the Metzora. We know that during his tahara process, on the 7th day of his tahara process, he has to take a full body shave. And the pasuk says, "Vayom hashvi yigalach es kol sori." He has to shave all his hair, and the pasuk then itemizes es roishai, es akanai, the hair on his head, on his beard, a long list of locations that he has to attend to. But why? Once you say yigalach es kol sori, isn't that all inclusive? So there are drashas here. Nafkulu meroishai, they learn the concept of esed say from the word roishai, as we're going to see in the following brayso. Listen, roishai matamad loima. Why would the Torah have to explain roishai? What's the kasha? Says Rashi, 3 lines from the top. Roishai matamad loima b'metzeruk siv yigalachas kol sari. All is here. Haray roishai b'chlal includes the head. Lamalil michtav roishai. Why does the Torah have to specify roishai? Answers the brayso, 3 lines from the top, because the Torah is trying to address another concern. We all know there's a mitzvah to leave over corners, what we call the payas. You're not meant to shave off the payas. We're not allowed to run a shaver around his head and cut off the corners, the payas. If so, perhaps I would deduce from here, af mitzvah kain, even a mitzvah on the 7th day, he may not shave off the payas. He has to leave them intact. Talmud Leimar. That's why the pasuk has to specify rosh. No, he cuts it all off, even the corners of his hair. Oh, so we see that asay deichelos asay, the mitzvah asay of yigalachas kol sari overrides the isser of leisakifu pas roishchem. Continues the Gemara. Apparently, the fact that the Tana needed a special allowance in this case to cut off the payas. You see, perhaps it's not even a problem when you cut the entire head of hair off. Perhaps cutting off payas is only concerned when you have a head of hair and you have corners, right, the edges of your hair, and you cut them off, you shave them off. But suppose he does a full-blown shave of all his hair. Who says that's a problem? It's not like you're cutting off the payas. There's no hair, period. No main hair, no corners. The fact that the Tana needed a special allowance in this case, even though he's really doing a full-blown shave, is indicative of the fact that he holds, because Savar Haitana, Hakafas, Kol HaReish Shma Kafa. Even a full-blown shave is considered an isser of leisakivu pas roishchem. Removing the payas in this manner is also problematic, and therefore you need a special heter. Roishai tells you you're allowed to shave off even the corners of his hair, corners of his head, the payas. Oh, here's the makar that we're looking for. We achieved our objective. Asay deiche leisase, asks the Gemara, but no, you can object. You can draw a distinction. Ikelemifrach. Why? Mal lav da hakafa shekain lav shein sheva bakoil. You see, this isser to remove one's payas is not really a universal isser. Women, they're not included in this isser. So it's somewhat of a limited isser, and perhaps that's why the essay can negate it. But a universal isser wouldn't work this way. So getting back to Yibum, why do we need a pasuk of Aleha to tell you you cannot apply Yibum to an erva? Why would you think to apply Yibum to an erva? Erva is an isser that's shava bakoil. Everybody must adhere to isser arayis, men, women equally. In this case, you wouldn't even think that an essay can override that. So back to square one. Ella asyum ezikni. Rather, we'll learn from the next word in the pasuk. Right, the 7th day, he shaves off all his hair. Es roishay, ves ziknei. And again, it's an extra pasuk. The Sanya, ziknei matamud loima, once we say cut everything, why specify beard? Because there's an isser in shaving off one's beard with a razor. The Kehanim are meant to shave off their beards with a razor, and we learn from the Kehanim to Yisraelim as well. Sheme'ani, perhaps I would think, af kohen mitzvah kain, even if the kohen happens to be a mitzvah in his tahara process, he might shave off his beard. That's why the pasuk spells it out. You're allowed to do that. So here we see that the mitzvah of shaving overrides the isser of shaving one's beard. Now, of course, it's not needed if it's only trying to tell us that an essay can negate a limited lav, a lav which doesn't apply equally to all, because that we already know from the previous drasha, from Raisha. We've already established that. The Torah doesn't just repeat itself. This is a klal. When we have a drasha or a pasuk which is not needed for its own sake, we go ahead and we look to apply it elsewhere. So if it's not needed for its own sake, to tell you that the asay can override a limited lav, a lav which doesn't apply to all equally, tzineu inyan, the lav hashava b'koyer. Let's apply it to a universal lav, to an all-encompassing lav, to a standard lav, such as Isser of Arayis. Yibam will override it. And here we found our makar, that asay is doiche any lois asay. Vakati itzrich, what do you mean? We still need it for its own sake. It's not available to teach us a universal concept of essay doiche lois essay. If it's a lav that applies to all people, a strong lav, it's needed for its own sake. We need it for right here to tell you that a mitzvah can shave his beard, although typically a kohen is not meant to do that. Why? Why do I need it specified again? Once I know that the asay of mitzvah allows you to shave off payos, I would apply the same to a beard. No, perhaps I would think shani kehanim. A mitzvah that pertains to kehanim is different, because kehanim keep a higher standard. Hoyel v'ribo behenakosov mitzvahs yiseres, we find that Hashem increased their mitzvahs, gave them a higher standard of living, and therefore, perhaps I would say a mitzvah asay cannot override a lois asay pertaining to Kohanim, even if this lois asay is not shava b'koil. It doesn't apply to all people equally. It doesn't apply to women. But since it pertains to Kohanim, who maintain high standards, they have to keep to it. They have to adhere to it. An essay can't come override it. That's why we need the pasuk to tell. In this case, it does. Kemashman the dachi, yeah. The asay of the mitzvah overrides this lav. But again, perhaps only because it's a limited lav. It's lav she'ein shava b'kol. It doesn't apply to all individuals equally. It doesn't apply to the entire Klal Yisrael. It doesn't apply to women. However, in the case of an erva, it's a universal lav. Who's to say? Who's to even think that an essay is doichelois essay? So back to the kash. Ella asim Roisha da'achtana. Rather, we're going to learn from Roisha of another bris, the Sanya. Roisha matamad loima. Back to that pasuk of Mitzvah. Now, this Tana is going to hold that since the Mitzvah is shaving off his entire hair, he's not really doing an isser of akafas harosh. He's not removing the peyah. Peyahs are the corners. When you have a head of hair, and then the corners are peyahs. You can't shave them off. But if you remove the entire supply of hair, the head, the corners, there's no isser of leisakivu pas roishchem. This Bryce disagrees with the previous Bryce. So that's the starting point of the Bryce. And we don't really need a heter, an allowance to remove payas. That issa wouldn't apply here. Rather, what is the Torah trying to allow? The Sanya. Roisha matamad loima. Why specify Roisha once you say you do all the hair? Why explain Roisha? Matamad loima. The answer is we're speaking about a nazir. This fellow is a Matzorah, also happens to be a nazir, who undertook a vow, a commitment to refrain from cutting his hair for 30 days. Can he go ahead and shave his hair during the tahara process? The answer is yes. And that's what the Torah is coming to allow. Tar lo yavar al roshei. A nazir may not run a razor over his hair. Sheme'ani af mitzvah, a nazir came, perhaps this applies to a nazir who happens to be a mitzvah as well. There's an isser of shaving. even during the tahara process of the Mitzvah? No. That's why Torah spells it out. That extra wood Rosh is coming to cover this situation. Here we go. Asay of Mitzvah overrides Lois Asay of a Nazir. But you can still challenge this source. You can draw a line between the Lois Asay of Nazir and elsewhere. The Isra of shaving a Nazir is not really an Isra that's cemented. It's not absolute. You can go ahead and ask the Rav to be matir, to negate, to cancel that Nazir's commitment. Says Rashi on the bottom line. Go to the Chacham. Tell him, look, I regret having undertaken this commitment. It's too hard to handle. He'll allow it. So Isra Nazir is not an absolute Isra. So perhaps I would think it's lighter than a typical Leis Asay. Hilkach, Osi Asay v'dachile. So an Asay can override it. But a regular Leis Asay, who's to say that an Asay pushes him away? Continues the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom. Because if you don't agree with this argument, that Isra Nazir is more lenient than your typical Isra, what are you going to say to the following question? The fact is, we do know. Although an Asay can override a Lois Asay, so when he's faced with a single objector, he overrides him. But if you have an Asay on one side, faced with a Lois Asay and an Asay, so we have an Asay and a Lois Asay paired together, challenging the Asay, an Asay, Deiche, Lois Asay v'Asay, you can't push them aside. Now, just for a second, by the way, the Mepharshim ask, of course not. Asay is Deiche Lois Asay. Why would an Asay be Deiche an Asay? So Rabbi Chana Wasserman says we're speaking about a Isra Asay. Let's say a Nazir. The law is don't cut your hair. The Asay is let your hair grow. So when he cuts his hair, he's basically being over a Maaseh Isra, doing a Lois Asay, and also being a Vatal the Asay. It's an Isra Asay. It's not a positive commandment that he's commanded to do. Let your hair grow. Don't cut it. So of course, one Asay can't override another Asay that pertains to doing. But here it's an Asay that pertains to an Isra. By cutting his hair, he's sort of negating the Asay. So it's very similar in nature to a Lois Asay. Don't do that. Don't cease to fulfill the Asay. Don't stop letting your hair grow. Different type of Asay. So here, perhaps I would say that the mitzvah Asay of going ahead and doing the Giluach of the Mitzvah, which is a Maaseh Asay, can override a Lois Asay and an Asay that oppose him. By the way, the Marsha and Yuma says another reason why Asay Deichel Lois Asay, because an Asay is a positive act, it's an action, it's a Maaseh. And that's stronger than the Isra Lois Asay, which tells you, stay put, be passive, don't do that. So a Maaseh is stronger than just passivity. Interesting approach. In any case, we know for a fact that that's so. An Asay cannot go against a Asay and a Lois Asay. Why not? Ligmar min Nazir. Take a look at Nazir. He's involved in a Lois Asay and an Asay. Don't cut your hair, let it grow. What happens when he's a Mitzvah? He does away with both. He cuts his hair. An Asay overrides a Lois Asay and an Asay. So why don't we apply this to the entire Torah? We know we don't do that. Oh, so you must say Nazir is different. Element Nazir, my time of Ligamrin. Why don't you learn from Nazir? Because of this argument, because Yisur Nazir are more light, more lenient. You can just go ahead and remove it, you can cancel it. Getting back to our case, in our quest to find the makar of Esay Dechel, we found Nazir. But no, you can say Nazir. That's not right. Sheken Yeshna b'She'ela. Isser Nazir is something which is sort of temporary. That's why it can be done away by the Essay, but a bona fide Lois Essay cannot. So back to square one. We don't have a raya that Essay is Deichei, a standard Lois Essay. Elo says the Gemara, let's go back home. Go back to Tzitzis. Lo'ila mikra kama. Go back to the first pasuk of Tzitzis. What was the question? According to Shittas Rabbanan, we don't have extra words, which enable the drush of Smuchin, which lead us to understand that Kalayim B'Tzitzis is okay. We do have extra words as follows. Im kain, because the pasuk is just telling you about mitzvah tzitzis. Leimakrot tzitzis tas alacha. The Torah would use the word tzitzis instead of gedilim. Tzitzis tas alacha. Gedilim. Why does the Torah use this interesting word gedilim? Lomali shmamino lafnuyi. It's meant to indicate that there is some drasha embedded therein, and the drasha is the smuchen to connect the two psukim, tzitzis to kalayim, to allow that combination. Shmamino lafnuyi. Highly shur dehasa. There's nothing extra. The word dilim is very precise and very directed at telling you the amount of strings that you need for the tzitzis. Because the word gedil, which means a braid, is a minimum of shnaim. You need two strings to braid. Gedilim is a double braid, arba. So we have 4 strings. How do you go ahead and form these strings? Asay gdil, so make a braid. Upaslei metoich, and have the loose strings fall out of the braid, right? So we sort of wrap and we braid and we tie the top part of our strings, and then the bottom will just lie loosely. So the word gdilim is telling you how to make the tzitzis. Nothing extra here. Im came, but if it were so, that we're just trying to describe the process of making tzitzis, lemakra leisilbash shatnes. The pasuk would say leisilbash shatnes, right? We have 2 psukim here. Leisilbash shatnes semer pishtem yachtav. Next pasuk, gedilim tas lachal arba kanfes ksuscha. We apply smuchen. Why did the Torah place one next to the other? To tell you kalayim and tzitzis are compatible. We do have extra words, extra phrases. Because im kain lemakro leisilbash shatnes. If it's just telling you the simple meaning, the Torah would use the word shatnes. Semer pishtem, right? Shatnes is semer pishtem, a mixture of those 2 things. What about yachtav? Why is that needed? The yachtav lamali, why does the pasuk add the word yachtav? That's an extra pasuk. Shmam no lafnuye makes it available to tell us about the drush. Va'akatimi boile. It's needed to teach us a very important halacha. The toikev shteit kifois chibur. The only way to really connect the 2 pieces, the wool and the linen, needs to be a double insert. But kifa achas einei chibur, but a single insert of that needle doesn't really connect them halachically. So you have a piece of wool, a piece of linen. When are they considered connected and problematic? So you have the needle, which goes through. Needle with the thread goes through. If it goes through once, from one to the other, that's not a proper connection. That's loose, then it could just fall out. Shteit chifos, you have to put it this way and insert it back. A 2-way insert is considered a chibur. That's what Yachtav teaches us. It has to be together in unison. There's nothing extra here. Im came, because if it were so, lichtav rachman lesilbash tzemer pishtem yachtav. You could just say, don't wear tzemer pishtem together. Shan is lamli. Why the word shan is? Again, this is an indication of a drush. Shemamina lafnuye, to allow the drush. V'akatmi boile. It's coming to tell you something else. These materials have to be properly processed materials. Achi shua, combed, tavui, spun, venuz, and woven. Rashi learns combed, spun, and woven together, wool and linen together. Tosfos disagrees. He says each one independently has to be properly combed, spun, and woven, and then attached. It doesn't have to be spun and woven together. In any case, it's coming to tell you how to make what constitutes kilayim, as opposed to just taking random pieces of felt, of fibers, and just pressing them together as felt. That's not proper kilayim. So proper material, proper threads. That's what we learn from Shanis. Nothing extra here. And says the Gemara, Ella kula mishaten is nafka. The way the Rishonim learn, as the Gemara meant like this. Gemara means that if it were so, the pasuk would spell it out. Shua, tavoy, venus. Why use this interesting word shatnes? It's coming to tell you it's an indication of a drush embedded therein. Apply smuchen to allow kalayim betzitzis. Okay, so that's really the end of the story. We found the prize that we're looking for. Asay dechelos asay from kalayim betzitzis, and therefore, I would think to myself that Yibum, which is mitzvah say, will apply even to an erva. So as deceased brother's wife happens to be, aside from his sister, happens to be his daughter, happens to be his mother-in-law, Asay of Yibum would override that issue. And that's why the pasuk has to come and tell us, Aleho, no, Yibum doesn't apply in the context of an erva. Asks the Gemara. I understand. Ashkechan the aseh aseh v'dachi lois aseh. Great. I see that an aseh can override a simple lois aseh, such as mitzvahs aseh of tzitzis can override kilayim. But in our case, it's more than that. It's more than just a plain lois aseh. Lois aseh sheish by kares hecha ashkechan dachi. Where do you find that a aseh has the ability to override a lois aseh that has kares, which would necessitate a drasha by yibum the isdruch aleha, which would require the drasha of aleha lemeisra to disallow yibum. In this case, why would I even think yibum can override a lois aseh with kares? And have you ever has kares? Have we discussed back in Av Gimel? Now we're looking for a makar that essay can be deichel lois aseh with kares. That serves as the basis for the need to apply a drasha, to introduce a drasha to disallow this type of thing by yibum. So where do we find the essay pushes aside let's say with kares? Perhaps from Mila. You do Mila even on Shabbos. The pasuk says Bayim Hashmini. We learn Bayim Afilu b'Shabbos. Why? Evidently, Mila, which is a mitzvah essay, can push aside Shabbos despite the fact that it has kares. 1 second, Mila is so different than your typical mitzvah. It's so much higher. Take a look at the parasha of bris. We have 13 mentionings of the word bris. Of course, such an important mitzvah can override kares as well. How could you compare that to yibum, which doesn't have that feature? Okay, mi Pesach. We'll learn from Karban Pesach, mitzvah say, which happens even on Shabbos. So just as the Karban Pesach can be brought on Shabbos despite the fact that it's a malacha, evidently mitzvah say is stronger than the lois aseh that has kares. Well, the big difference. Mala Pesach shekein kares. The mitzvah aseh of Karban Pesach contains within it a kares as well. If one neglects to bring a Karban Pesach, he gets kares. And Yibum doesn't have that feature. Mitzvah aseh of Yibum doesn't have that. Okay, mitamid. We have another option. Karban tamid is brought even on Shabbos. Mitzvah aseh pushes aside Shabbos, which has kares. Mala tamid shekein tader. Tamid has an added advantage over a Yibum. It's a constant daily affair. Perhaps that sets it higher. So you have 3 possible options, and none of them worked. Mila has the 13 brises. Pesach has the kares penalty for those who ignore the Pesach. Tamid is tader. And none of these features are to be found by Yibum. So why would I think that Yibum is daicha? Allah is to say with kares. Says the Gemara Mechadali Asi. Understand either one of these options don't work. You can't learn from any of these because either one of them have an advantage, have a feature not present in Yibum. But let's make a sort of a joint source. Teisi mitarti. We'll take 2 sources and put them together and find a common denominator between the 2 and say, look, what does Pesach and Tamid have in common, for instance? It says, say, push aside kares. And Yibum as well. Okay, let's go through the options. Mahai Teisi. Which 2 are you going to learn from? Mila Pesach. Put together Mila and Pesach. 1 second. They have something in common you don't have. Shekein kares. In both cases. Whether by Mila or whether by Pesach. One ignores these mitzvahs, he gets kares. That's something that Yibum doesn't have. Okay, mi Pesach v'Tamid. Let's put together Pesach and Tamid. Common denominator is we have mitzvah saseh, which is deicha kares. Yibum as well. No, shekein tzerach gavoya. They have something in common which Yibum doesn't have. They're both karbanis. Rashi says tzerach gavoya l'mizbeach. Of course, all mitzvahs are in pursuit of spiritual advancement, but this is greater than that. It's actually a carbon that goes on the mizbeach, which Yibum doesn't have. Okay, so that doesn't work. Mila v'Tamid. Let's put together Mila and Tamid. What do they both have in common? They're both mitzvahs aseh, which are deicha. Shabbos that has kares. Well, here as well, there's an added advantage that Yibum doesn't have. Shekein yesh non lifnei adibur. Both mitzvahs Mila and Karban Tamid were active before dibur, which means before Matan Torah. Rashi says Mila was done by Avraham Avinu as well. Tamid they did before Matan Torah. V'aliba the mandamar, following the shita that holds Oila shekru v'Yisrael b'midbar, the Oila that the pasuk speaks about, Vayalu Oilos before Matan Torah. What was it? Oilas Tamid hava. So we see that Tamid happened before Matan Torah, something which Yibum doesn't have. Umikulu nami. What about putting together all 3? Pesach, Mila, and Tamid. What do they all have in common? It would seem that aside from them being a mitzvah say, they have nothing in common, because the element found in one is not found in the other, and so on and so forth. So the common denominator here is pretty simple. Mitzvah say is doichel say sheish b'karos. Let's apply that to Yibam. No, we found something that they have in common you don't have. Shekain yesh nan l'fnei adibur. All three items, oilas tamid, mila, and Pesach as well, happened before Matan Torah. Right? You didn't want Mekayim mitzvahs Pesach and Mitzrayim as well. So perhaps that's what sets them higher, gives them that added advantage to be doicha oilas say sheish b'karos, as opposed to Yibam, which doesn't have that. Now, although we find the concept of Yibam by Yehuda, right? He was told the son to be miyabim, the Yevamos, Tamar, to Ritvayas Eskash. He says it wasn't really mitzvah Yibam. They had the anhaga of Yibam, the concept of Yibam. They did Ramban is Marach and Chumash about this, but there was no outright mitzvah. They weren't doing the same thing we're doing. In fact, their Yibam, Rishonim say their Yibam could have been done by any of the relatives. Of course, the brother is the closest, but it was really something that was applicable to all. That's not what we do today. It's entirely different. Same concept, but the packaging is very different. As opposed to these three items, Korban Pesach, it's the same like it was. Korban Tamid, the same thing. Mila, the same as it was then. Actually, there's a kash on this because the Gemara says that Avram Avinu did Mila without Priya. So they added enhancement in the Mila he didn't do. But bottom line is, for us, this is a Mila. We need Mila and Priya. But pretty much the mitzvah is the same thing. As opposed to Yibam, which wasn't really applicable before Matan Torah. Okay, so back to the kasha. Where do we find a possible source for essay doichel sheish b'karos? Ella Itzrich, says the Gemara. Yes, we need a miyut of aleh by Yibam to disallow the mitzvah say of Yibam in a context of loisei sheish b'karos, because otherwise I would think it does override it. Why? What's the source? Why would I think that would override? Perhaps I would think we're going to learn from the mitzvah of kibbud avim, where we seem to find that a mitzvah asay can override even a loisei say with kares. Here it goes. This Tanya. The Brisa says yochel yehei kibbud avim deicha Shabbos. Perhaps I would think kibbud avim is so important. One of the aseres hadibros. The Gemara says hukash kvoidem lekavod hamakim. More in kedushin. Honoring one's parents is reminiscent of honoring Hashem. So perhaps it can be Deicha Shabbos. Father tells him, heat up some water, etc. Is that Deicha Shabbos? Talmud Leimer, no. Ish imoy vaviv tiro v'eshab soiset yishmer. The pasuk places them next to each other. Kibbud avim with Shmira Shabbos to tell you kulchem chayavim b'chvaydi, despite the fact that kibbud avim is so lofty, but all of you, including your parents, you and your parents, have an obligation to honor me. Rashi says, the pasuk concludes with Ani Hashem, and that's the punchline. Ani Hashem, I'm the Hashem for all of you. True, your father is asking you to do something, but remember, he is also mishubad. He's obligated to honor Hashem. So you can't fulfill your father's wishes at the expense of Hashem. So what does it sound like from the Brisa? What was the default assumption? That it does override. We need a pasuk to say it doesn't. It's pretty clear from the Brisa that the default assumption is, the premise is that asay is doiche leisasay with kares. Why? My love, aren't we speaking to Amalei? Father tells him shchoitli, basheli, slaughter the animal for me, cook for me, a malacha, an outright malacha, which is a kares on Shabbos. And if not for the pasuk, I would say it's Deicha Shabbos. The time of the Kasser Rachmana, we don't listen to the father only because of the special pasuk. Halav hachilai, but otherwise I would say no. Halav hachidachi. Father's instructions will override Shabbos, because I say is Deicha to say even when this occurs. Here's the makar. Here's what we're looking for. So not necessarily. Love the mechamer. Who says we're speaking that he's telling him to do a malacha? He's telling him simply to lead a loaded donkey. Rashi says it's not really a malacha, it's not a personal malacha, it's only a lav. Shanim says the Gemara the Havamina figured, speaking about personal activities. It says, guard the Shabbos. Don't be engaged in malacha, outright malachas, shchita, bishul. The Gemara says no. Perhaps we're speaking about a lighter type of isser, not something which involves karas, lav de machamer. It's only a lav, doesn't have karas. And in that case, perhaps I would think asay of kibbutz of aim overrides. That's what the pasuk says it doesn't. But nowhere do you find that there's any hava amina than asay of b'deichei loises sheish b'kares, and that's the case. We haven't really arrived at our destination. Okay, to be continued Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. Okay, so what did we learn today? We started with the premise of asay deichei lois asay, which is the basis for the drasha of Aleh. We need a pasuk to tell you don't do yibum by an Arab, because otherwise I would think an asay of yibum will be deichei lois asay. Why would I think so? The Gemara attempted some attempts along the way. We had the mitzvah, the payas, we had the beard of the mitzvah, we had the hair of the nazar. None of them worked out. We went back to kalayim betzitzis. We have an extra pasuk which enables the drasha to tell you, look, tzitzis is okay even with kalayim. An asay is deichei lois asay. Yeah, that's a standard lois asay. He was speaking about an Erev which has karas. Who's to say that an asay would override that? Why would you need a drasha to disallow it by yibum? Why would I even think yibum can set aside, can push aside a lois asay with karas? We tried from Pesach, Tamid, Milah, and now in the midst of kibbutz. All the best to you and much hatzlacha.